Centuries before Times Square glowed, this land was home to indigenous nations, the Iroquoian and Algonquian peoples. In 1524, explorer Giovanni da Verrazzano became the first European to record this vast natural harbor, marking the beginning of a new era. A century later, the Dutch founded New Amsterdam in 1624, and Manhattan was reportedly purchased from Native Americans 2 years later, a transaction still debated by historians. What began as a small trading outpost would grow, break, rebuild, welcome immigrants from every corner of the world, and transform into a global giant. New York became a city of 8.3 million people, a maze of 32,000 streets with 5 boroughs, 3 rivers. Let's trace back to its roots. This is the history of New York. Long before centuries, New York was a land of indigenous nations who lived here for thousands of years. The region was inhabited mainly by Iroquoian-speaking groups, such as the Mohawk, and Algonquian-speaking peoples like the Lenape, who thrived through hunting, farming, and river-based trade. Their settlements were organized, communal, and deeply rooted in nature, with spiritual ties to the land they called home. They traded furs, crops, and crafted goods across long networks, proving this was not an empty wilderness but a sophisticated world long before Europeans arrived. In 1524, Giovanni da Verrazzano, an Italian navigator serving France, sailed into New York Harbor, recording the coastline and noting the vast potential of this natural gateway. His arrival became the first documented European contact with the region, sparking future competition and curiosity among European powers who saw profit in the rivers and fur trade. Though no permanent settlements followed immediately, Verrazzano's journey marked the moment Europe's eyes turned toward this land. Decades later, interest transformed into colonization, and a new era began. European presence took form when the Dutch West India Company established a settlement in 1624, planting the roots of New Amsterdam. Settlers initially occupied Governor's Island before moving to the southern tip of Manhattan, where they built Fort Amsterdam to protect trade and territory. Just 2 years later, in 1626, colonial governor Peter Minuit negotiated a purchase of Manhattan, reportedly offering goods valued at 60 guilders, a symbolic deal still debated, but famously tied to New York's origin story. With its strategic harbor, the settlement quickly expanded into a bustling fur trading hub, attracting merchants, ships, and early multicultural communities. The promising Dutch outpost rapidly gained economic momentum. European powers watched the trade flowing through New Amsterdam, especially the English, who saw the harbor as a gateway to influence in North America. In 1664, English warships arrived, and the Dutch, heavily outnumbered and lacking military strength, surrendered the colony without a major battle. As soon as control shifted, the settlement was renamed New York, a tribute to the Duke of York, the future King James II of England. This shift didn't erase Dutch roots overnight. Names, architecture, and trade practices lingered, but it placed the region firmly into the English colonial world, altering its political future. English control set the stage for dramatic upheaval in the next century. As tensions sharpened between Britain and its colonies, New York found itself at the heart of revolutionary strategy. Its deep harbor, central location, and access to the Hudson River made it a critical military target for both sides. When war erupted in 1775, New York became one of the most contested spaces of the Revolution. In 1776, after the Declaration of Independence, British forces launched a massive assault and seized control, forcing George Washington's army to retreat. The city then spent most of the war under British occupation, serving as the headquarters for the Crown's North American operation. The occupation was harsh for patriots who remained, yet it became a refuge for loyalists seeking safety. Fires, espionage, and street clashes marked the period, showing how deeply the revolution fractured society. But the war eventually turned, and New York stood on the edge of rebirth. When Britain finally acknowledged defeat in 1783, the last redcoat troops evacuated New York, and cheering crowds filled the streets, a symbolic moment marking the end of colonial rule. The city, worn by occupation but bursting with opportunity, transformed almost instantly into a political hub of the new nation. In 1789, history reached a defining milestone. George Washington was sworn in as the first president of the United States in New York City, on the balcony of Federal Hall. For a brief but significant period, New York served as the nation's first capital, where Congress met, the Bill of Rights was drafted, and the young republic took its earliest steps. This moment marked New York not only as a strategic port, but as a birthplace of American governance. In 1788, New York ratified the US Constitution and became the 11th state, securing a permanent role in the new republic's future. This change marked the moment New York transitioned from a colony to a state with its own voice in the federal system. Political debates filled halls and taverns, newspapers circulated ideas, and leaders envisioned how New York could rise as a commercial giant. As government structures stabilized, trade increased, laws formed, and the foundations of modern governance took shape. In the early 19th century, New York was already a busy port, but its connection to the interior of North America was limited. That changed massively in 1825 with the completion of the Erie Canal, a 363-mile waterway linking the Hudson River to the Great Lakes. The canal slashed transport time and cost, allowing goods to flow between the Atlantic and inland territories with unprecedented speed. New York became the primary gateway for American trade, drawing merchants, bankers, and entrepreneurs from across the nation. Grain, timber, iron, textiles, resources moved through New York faster than ever before, fueling industrial expansion and economic dominance. Manufacturing centers grew, steamboats crowded the waters, and Wall Street began to emerge as a financial powerhouse. The canal transformed not just business, but geography. Towns along the route exploded in population, farms expanded, and the United States pushed westward. This one project turned New York into the commercial capital of the young nation. During the 19th century, as industrial jobs multiplied and opportunity spread, waves of immigrants crossed oceans in search of work, safety, and hope. Europe faced famine, war, poverty, and political repression, while New York offered possibilities. By the mid-1800s, ships arrived daily carrying Irish fleeing the Great Famine, Germans escaping conflict, and later Italians, Eastern Europeans, and countless others. The opening of Ellis Island in 1892 turned immigration into a defining chapter of the city's identity. It became the nation's busiest immigration station, processing more than 12 million newcomers over the decades. Families were questioned, examined, tagged, and for many, finally welcomed. Streets filled with new languages, foods, music, and traditions. Neighborhoods like Little Italy, Harlem, and Chinatown began forming their own rhythms. Tenements crowded but alive with community. Factories roared, ports bustled, populations surged, wealth increased, and diversity became New York's greatest strength. The stage was set. As the 20th century approached, New York was ready to step onto the world stage not just as an American city, but as a global one. When the Civil War erupted in 1861, the state of New York emerged as a powerhouse for the Union cause. As the most populous state in the Union, New York furnished more men than any other, over 460,000 soldiers, sailors, and Marines, to fight for the preservation of the United States. These New Yorkers served in hundreds of regiments, fought in key battles, and helped shape the war's outcome. The state didn't just send manpower. Its industrial cities, shipyards, foundries, and factories mobilized. Firms in New York produced ships, ammunition, textiles, and supplies that fed the Union war machine. Meanwhile, railroads, many centered in New York, moved troops and war material swiftly across the region. The price was high. More than 50,000 New Yorkers died, many on battlefields, many from disease and hardship. Yet their sacrifice cemented New York's role as crucial to national survival. Even as society was divided over slavery and conscription, a large segment of New York rose to support the Union, marking the first step of the state's transformation into a political, social, and economic powerhouse. The war ended, but the engines of growth, industry, finance, and ambition were only beginning to roar. As America surged into modernity, New York transformed from a regional stronghold into a global symbol of ambition, commerce, and innovation. At the heart of this shift was Wall Street, a narrow stretch of lower Manhattan that evolved far beyond its modest colonial origins to become the world's financial mecca. Banks, investment firms, the New York Stock Exchange, and major corporations headquartered on Wall Street drove global trade, finance, and investment. New York set the tone for markets worldwide. Simultaneously, New York's skyline began changing dramatically. The city saw an explosion of skyscrapers, early giants like the Woolworth Building and later icons like the Chrysler Building, transforming the city into a vertical metropolis. These architectural marvels weren't just tall buildings, they symbolized ambition. Cultural movements, too, embedded New York into global consciousness. Artists, writers, musicians, immigrants, and dreamers all converged in a city pulsing with diversity and energy. The city became a melting pot, a laboratory of ideas where commerce met creativity, and people from every background shaped its character. As decades passed, the foundations laid in the 19th century industry, immigration, and financial power merged into a new identity. By the time the 21st century arrived, New York was no longer just a great American city. It was a global hub. Today, New York stands at the crossroads of the world in finance, media, fashion, technology, and culture. The foundations built over centuries continue to evolve and adapt. Financial institutions headquartered around Wall Street still drive global capital flows. Despite challenges, New York remains among the top financial centers in the world. The stock exchanges, banks, hedge funds, and countless financial firms stationed here influence economies from Tokyo to London. Simultaneously, the city remains a magnet for creativity and diversity. Global fashion houses, media companies, tech startups, artists, and dreamers arrive daily, adding new layers to the city's identity. The city that sent tens of thousands to fight for a union now commands global finance. The skyline that rose after war and industry now casts its shadow over a world connected by commerce, culture, and ambition. New York's story is one of resilience and constant reinvention. Over centuries, it has faced wars, floods, and waves of change, yet always emerged stronger. Today, the city stands as a symbol of ambition, diversity, and endless possibility. Its journey from a small Dutch settlement to a global metropolis reminds us how history shapes the present in remarkable ways. And this was the history of New York. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe to the channel. And let's keep exploring your favorite historical events and the hidden stories behind them. Thank you for watching. See you in the following video.